Hi, everyone. It is Friday, June 13th. You are listening to the Mo News podcast. I am Jill Wagner. This is the place where we bring you just the facts. We read all of the news and read between the lines so you don't have to. And today I am joined by our Mo News senior producer, Sari Safar-Sukenik, filling in for Moshe. Sari, thank you for hopping on today. But by the way, I've got Moshe Winunu and Sari Safar-Sukenik. I can't get a break here with these names.
Tough names. I got 3 of them, and they're all S's, so it's a tongue twister. But I'm excited to join.
I'm very happy that you're on this Friday the 13th, by the way.
Oh, wow. I hadn't even thought about that. Ooh.
Spooky. And also a quick shout out. It's Father's Day weekend, so happy Father's Day to all of the dads out there. My dad, my husband, my brother, my father-in-law. Got to give them all a shout out.
My dad also listens every day, so happy Father's Day to my dad, Kenny Safar.
Moshe and I always say we find out who listens to the podcast when we give them a shout out and if they recognize it or not.
Totally. I just told my dad today that I was going to be on the podcast tomorrow, so I know he's going to be listening, and he has no idea that I'm going to give him a Father's Day shout out. So,
hi, Kenny. All right, now to the headlines, starting with a massive Israeli attack on Iran's nuclear sites and nuclear scientists, what the U.S. is saying about the strikes, and what to watch for next. What we know about the tragic Air India crash that left over 200 people dead, with one passenger miraculously surviving the crash. Here in the U.S., a judge rules that President Trump illegally used California's National Guard in the Los Angeles protests. The Department of Justice, though, appealing the decision. Senator Alex Padilla forcibly removed and handcuffed after confronting the DHS Secretary Kristi Noem. What exactly happened? This Flag Day, President Trump planning a massive military parade, but will Republicans be there? In some health news, why singing is good for your brain, even if you're not Beyoncé. And
Which
who
we
is?
are Beyoncé, right?
I'm going. Well, if you've listened to this podcast, you know that I am certainly not, and nor is Moshe, by the way.
I've never sang on this podcast yet, so I'm going to have people assume that I sound like Beyoncé.
Sticking with music, singer Sabrina Carpenter sparking some controversy with her new album cover. And it is Friday. Cheers to the freaking weekend, what we are watching, reading, and eating. Okay, let's start in the Middle East, where the Israeli military launched massive preemptive strikes against Iran overnight local time, targeting the country's nuclear program, including multiple strikes on Iranian nuclear sites, dozens of military targets, and targeted assassinations of Iran's nuclear scientists. Israel calls it necessary for its self-defense. It is a dramatic escalation that increases the chances of an all-out war between Israel and Iran. Israel has declared a state of emergency and is expecting that Iran will retaliate. Israel's defense minister, Israel Katz, saying the country is expecting a missile and drone attack against the state of Israel and its civilian population in the immediate future. As of this recording, though, late Thursday night Eastern Time, Iran has not launched a retaliation yet. It all comes as the Trump administration had been in talks with Tehran on a possible nuclear deal. President Trump himself had recently said he told Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu not to launch a military strike while the talks were ongoing. U.S. Mideast envoy Steve Witkoff was supposed to meet for a 6th round of talks with Iran on Sunday. It is unclear if that is still going to happen. Most analysts say it is unlikely at this point. Now, in response to the overnight Israeli strikes, the Trump administration appearing to distance itself from Israel's decision to strike. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio saying in a statement, quote, "We are not involved in strikes against Iran, and our top priority is protecting American forces in the region." He said President Trump and the administration have taken all necessary steps to protect our forces and remain in close contact with our regional partners. Let me be clear, Iran should not target U.S. interests or personnel. The U.S. not involved in the strikes, but Israel did let the U.S. know that they were coming. Rubio said, quote, "Israel advised us that they believed this action was necessary for its self-defense." In his first comments since Israel struck Iran, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said in a video statement that Israel had attacked Iran's main nuclear enrichment facility in Natanz and Iran's leading nuclear scientists. He also said Israel struck at Iran's ballistic missile program. Take a listen.
This operation will continue for as many days as it takes to remove this threat. For decades, the tyrants of Tehran have brazenly, openly, called for Israel's destruction. They've backed up their genocidal rhetoric with a program to develop nuclear weapons.
He accused Iran of advancing its nuclear program, calling it a clear and present danger to Israel's very survival. Earlier this week, the Board of Governors of the International Atomic Energy Agency, which is the United Nations nuclear watchdog, formally found that Iran was not complying with its nuclear obligations. That's for the first time in 20 years. In response, Iran said that it would launch a new enrichment center in a secure location and replace the first-generation machines at another site with more modern equipment. Hours after that, this attack from Israel, the Islamic Republic of Iran state media saying that its top commander of the IRGC, or the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, Hossein Salami, was targeted in the Israeli airstrikes and is dead. Iran's Revolutionary Guard controls Iran's arsenal of ballistic missiles. Now, in addition to Salami, Israel believes the chief of Iran's military, Mohammad Bagheri, other members of the military's top brass, and senior nuclear scientists were all killed in these strikes. Israel attacked at least 6 military bases around Tehran, residential homes at 2 highly secure complexes for military commanders, and multiple residential buildings around Tehran. Now, as for the timing here, why now? As we heard from the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, Israel believed that Iran was inching closer to developing a nuclear weapon. He said it could be within a few months. Israel also thought it had a window of opportunity. The Israeli military damaged the Iranian air defense system during its attacks on Iran last year. Israel also severely decimated one of Iran's proxy groups, Hezbollah, in Lebanon. So what now? Israel has said these attacks will continue until there is no more nuclear threat from Iran, which is something it says could take days. Iran had previously said that it would hit U.S. personnel and assets if Israel were to attack. Earlier this week, the U.S. said it was going to evacuate non-essential staff from the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad and family members of military personnel from several bases in the Gulf. And as for a retaliation from Iran, the U.S. has previously helped defend Israel from Iranian attacks. Analysts say they believe that the U.S. will likely do so again. And of course, I just want to mention this is a very quickly developing story. So this is all where things stand as of very late Thursday evening. Definitely check the Mo News Instagram page at Mosh, Mosheh, throughout the day for more developments. Okay, now to the plane crash in India, one of the deadliest disasters involving a passenger aircraft in the last 2 decades. We learned on Thursday that at least one passenger, a 40-year-old British man, miraculously survived the crash. That Air India plane heading to London was carrying 242 passengers and crew members. It crashed moments after taking off in the western Indian city of Ahmedabad, slamming into a medical college about a mile from the airport. Indian officials say dozens of people on the ground were also killed. Local media reports that the plane crashed on top of the dining area of a medical college where dozens of students were having lunch. Still not clear what caused the plane to crash. Officials at the crash site say it was likely that it skidded after it came down, damaging buildings before bursting into flames. Sari, the video of the plane crashing almost does not look real. You could see the plane struggling to ascend. It looks like it's sinking, and then it descends over a cluster of buildings before crashing, causing this massive fireball. And then sections of the plane, including its tail, were just left jutting out of the damaged dining facility.
Yeah, I mean, just really astonishing images and video. It almost looks like it's going in slow motion too, if you watch it. And then there's just this massive fireball. So that was really shocking to see.
So the plane is a Boeing 787-8 Dreamliner. It had been carrying 169 Indian citizens, 53 British, 7 Portuguese, and 1 Canadian. At first, Indian officials believed that there were no survivors, and then incredibly, we learned that there was a surviving passenger. He was sitting in the first row in economy next to the emergency exit, seat 11A. He reportedly said he heard a loud noise before the crash just about 30 seconds after takeoff. But again, not clear what exactly that means and what caused this plane to crash. We know that the Air India plane reportedly made a Mayday call before the crash and that the plane lost a signal at around 625 feet.
Yeah, Jill, we're hearing it could take months or years to determine the cause of the crash, but safety experts questioned why the plane appeared to descend so soon after it took off. For some insight, we wanted to play this clip from David Susi, a former FAA safety inspector. He told CNN his initial impressions of what might have gone wrong.
Well, the fact that there was a Mayday call that quickly after, the rules around using the word Mayday mean that you're imminently losing control of the aircraft. You cannot recover, and that's what the Mayday means. So that happened. Why the signal was lost at 630 feet, I'm not sure. I don't have an answer for that, but I do have a concern about the configuration of the airplane after it took off, and you can see it's pretty clear that the flaps are not down on the aircraft and that the landing gear is out. And that's just the exact opposite of what you would expect to see at that altitude.
So he says that the landing gear should have been withdrawn and the flaps should have been down still to make the aircraft climb, which is clearly not what happened here. Investigators right now are looking for the plane's black box, which will provide a lot more information about what went wrong. He also talked about the Boeing 787 Dreamliner and its safety record. This is the first crash involving that model since it entered into service roughly 15 years ago. When he was with the FAA, he was involved in some of the certification of that plane. He says it's extremely sophisticated. It's technologically advanced to where it actually has sensors on the wings that sense the stresses on the wings, which will be recorded in the black box as well. So investigators are eager to have access to that. Now, Air India is India's flagship carrier. It's worked to improve its safety record after several dangerous incidents. In August 2020, an Air India express flight overshot the runway in a different Indian city, killing 21 people. So recently, there have been a ton of bad headlines regarding air travel, but at Mo News, we always want to put things into perspective. And statistically speaking, it is still safer to travel by air than by road, but airline crashes involving large passenger jets, when they do happen, frequently have high death tolls. Just a few months ago in January here in the United States, a regional passenger jet from Wichita, Kansas collided with a U.S. Army helicopter shortly before it had been about to land at Reagan National Airport outside Washington, D.C., and 67 people were killed. Obviously, that made a lot of headlines, and there were other incidents in the United States that followed. But again, we want to stress that air travel is generally safe for the millions and millions of people that travel by air every day.
Now back here in the United States, a federal judge issued an order late Thursday blocking President Trump from deploying members of the California National Guard in Los Angeles and ordered the administration to return control of the forces to California Governor Gavin Newsom. The restraining order takes effect today at noon Pacific time. The district judge, Charles Breyer, wrote in his ruling that President Trump's move to take over the National Guard violated the constitutional principle of states' rights. The president has deployed about 4,000 members of the Guard to LA in response to protests about immigration actions in the city. The Justice Department is appealing the decision. Important to note that the order does not rule on the Marines. And the ruling did come hours after Senator Alex Padilla, a Democrat from California, was forcibly removed from a news conference that was being held by Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem after he pushed past guards at a federal building in West Los Angeles. So Noem was in the city to address the ongoing demonstrations protesting President Trump's immigration policies. Here is a bit of what it sounded like. Padilla tries to shout a question at Noem, and then you can see and hear in the video federal agents push him out of the room. Eventually, they handcuff him while he was on the ground.
Hands up, hands up. I'm Senator Alex Padilla. I have questions for the secretary because the fact of the matter is a half a dozen violent criminals that you're rotating on your. I also want to go. On the ground. Hands behind your back. Hands behind your back. If you let my hands go, it's behind my back.
Padilla was eventually let go. He was not detained. Padilla, by the way, is the son of Mexican immigrants, and he's a Los Angeles native. So he says he was in LA to perform congressional oversight of the government's operations in the city and across his state. He says he happened to be in the same federal building as Noem and was watching her press conference from a different floor. And that's when he decided to go in person to try and ask her a question. The room was, of course, brimming with reporters. Secretary Noem was at the podium speaking. She was in the middle of thanking the U.S. Army, the Marines, the National Guard for providing, quote, security in Los Angeles. And that is when Padilla interrupted and law enforcement officers pushed him out. Noem later spoke to Fox News. She said the senator did not identify himself. She called it political theater. To be clear, Padilla did say at the time that he was a senator, but it is possible that she did not hear it.
You know, what I would say is we were conducting a press conference to update everyone on the enforcement actions that are ongoing to bring peace to the city of Los Angeles. And this man burst into the room, started lunging towards the podium, interrupting me and elevating his voice, and was stopped, did not identify himself, and was removed from the room. So as soon as he identified himself, appropriate actions were taken.
Noem said she wished Padilla would have reached out and said that he wanted to talk to her and that they actually did meet for about 10 to 15 minutes after the news conference. Sari, though, a very different picture from Senator Padilla.
Yeah, absolutely. Noem made a point to say that no one recognized him when he walked in the room, and that once that they did, things had de-escalated. Now, no charges are being filed against Padilla. Again, he was not detained. He spoke to reporters after the incident, and here's what he had to say.
If this is how this administration responds to a senator with a question, if this is how the Department of Homeland Security responds to a senator with a question, you can only imagine what they're doing to farm workers, to cooks, to day laborers out in the Los Angeles community and throughout California and throughout the country.
And Jill, of course, there's been lots of reaction. Governor Gavin Newsom of California denounced the action against Padilla, calling it, quote, outrageous, dictatorial, and shameful. He said Trump and his shock troops are out of control. This must end now. Senator Chuck Schumer, the minority leader, also addressed the Senate floor regarding the treatment of Padilla. He said the, quote, manhandling of a United States senator sickened his stomach. He said, we need immediate answers to what the hell went on. Then you've got Senator Lindsey Graham, a Republican from South Carolina, criticizing Padilla for interrupting the news conference. He said Padilla should have been respectful and, quote, what he ought to be doing, in my view, is making sure that we have rational immigration policy. And Senator Padilla, who's a nice man, sat on the sidelines for 4 years, watched the border completely be blown apart.
Now, as for what's actually happening on the ground, the LAPD has reported nearly 400 people were arrested or detained for disrupting peaceful protests against ICE raids or violating curfews that were put in place this week as a result of demonstrations in the city. Those numbers are since the protests started on Saturday, and it all came after ICE officers carried out raids last Friday in 3 locations across Los Angeles, including 2 Home Depots and a retail store where many Latinos work. At least 100 people have reportedly been detained by ICE since then, and it is stoking fear in immigrant communities, not only in Los Angeles, but beyond. There are reports that immigrants are carrying their green cards everywhere, and some are just staying home altogether as the ICE raids continue, now with hundreds of National Guard troops in Los Angeles deployed to back them up.
Yeah, this fear and uncertainty is also impacting shopping behaviors among the country's Latino community. This is according to a Wall Street Journal report that consumer goods companies, food and beverage makers, restaurants, and retailers say they've taken a hit since Trump took office as fears of ICE raids and deportations have grown and culminated in this week's protests around the country. Company executives at Coca-Cola say their sales have dropped 3% in North America during this year's first quarter, partly because of pullback by Hispanic shoppers, which are a huge market for them. The company says Hispanic customers have a $2.1 trillion spending power.
And then there are the ripple effects across the economy, where there are reports of migrants not showing up to work because some of those ICE raids are happening at places that employ a high number of migrants. Our Mo News producer, Lauren Janes, interviewed a restaurant owner in Los Angeles who says that some of her employees have been scared to show up to work regardless of their legal status. From Politico, preparations have been underway all week for tomorrow, on Saturday, June 14th, when the president is hosting a massive multi-million-dollar military parade in Washington, D.C. to celebrate the U.S. Army's 250th anniversary. It is also Flag Day and the president's 79th birthday.
I think it's someone else's birthday too, isn't it, Jill?
It is my birthday, yes.
It is your birthday. Happy birthday. Will you be attending the president's birthday and the Army's 250th anniversary?
You know, Sari, I plan to perhaps watch on TV from the comfort of my own home. I will not
Hopefully
be there.
with cake.
Definitely with cake. Tanks, meanwhile, have been rolling in since earlier this week. Roads have been repaved to accommodate the millions of pounds of military hardware that will roll down the streets to celebrate. Trump is reportedly very excited for this birthday party. MSNBC reporting that the idea for the parade was actually inspired by Trump attending Bastille Day celebrations in France back in 2017 and just loving the military parade part of it. There are reports that Trump had pushed for something similar in his first term, but was apparently told by some leaders at the Pentagon that this is, quote, what dictators do, and therefore he was deterred.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that we have seen in North Korea, Russia, other countries that are led by authoritarian leaders. And protesters are actually calling attention to that by organizing No Kings protests around the country at the same time as the parade. Demonstrators have been told to avoid D.C., though, due to heightened security in the area. And Trump has warned that any protesters at the parade would face, quote, very big force. Meanwhile, it doesn't seem like everyone in Trump's camp is on board either. Politico surveyed 50 GOP lawmakers, and only 7 said they plan to stay in Washington this weekend for the festivities. Some gave reasons, including scheduling conflicts, but notable that some of them are not attending. Those not attending include the chairs of the House and Senate Armed Services Committees, the top congressional officials overseeing the military. Senator John Kennedy from Louisiana also will not be attending. He was asked about all the money spent on the parade and the show of it all, and he dropped one of his very classic Kennedy lines. I'll let you take a listen.
The United States of America is the most powerful country in all of human history. We're a lion. And a lion doesn't have to tell you it's a lion. Everybody else in the jungle knows, and we're a lion.
But then there are those Republicans who are attending, some of Trump's most devoted supporters, such as Representatives Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia, Byron Donalds of Florida, and Elise Stefanik of New York.
All right, now to some lighter news from the Washington Post. A study shows that singing is good for your brain, even if you aren't good at it. Which, if you've heard me singing on the podcast many mornings, I think we know it is not my strength. But I give it the old college try, Sari. Research shows music has the power to relax your mind, promote brain health, and bring people closer together. It's known to release dopamine and activate the brain's reward system, and it's even a way to relieve anxiety or depression. But making music ourselves takes it to the next level because it gives you agency and allows you to experience the music in another dimension. So making music can protect brain health as we age. It facilitates neuroplasticity in our brains, which is why music therapy is often used for aging adults. One study of 132 older adults reported that 6 months of piano practice or active music listening led to increased gray matter in the brain and improvements in short-term memory. And all the better if you are making music with other people, which adds a community element to it.
Yeah, I mean, one purpose of this study seems to be to encourage people to sing and play music, even if they're not good at it, which, again, people can assess for themselves. One professor highlighted that there's not really a culture around making music, even if you're bad at it, whereas nobody says you shouldn't jog if you're not a fast runner.
I think that's a really interesting point.
Right.
Because I've actually even started to play tennis recently. And it's like there's a place for everybody, even if you're not good at playing tennis, which I was not when I first started again. But I still found people that I could play with. But if you're not good at making music, I think you're kind of just stuck singing in the shower.
I think people don't think of it as something that you can improve at or something that you can enjoy if you're not good at. But, you know, practice makes perfect with anything. And this whole idea makes sense to me, Jill. So I was once told that humming is actually a very effective way to relax because it activates this nerve called the vagus nerve, which is the longest nerve in your body. It goes from like the bottom of your brain to your abdomen, and it regulates things like heart rate and breathing and digestion. So activating the vagus nerve by humming relaxes the body, and it really works for me. So I feel like singing would have the same effect, but maybe more fun.
So my husband has told me, unbeknownst to me, that I walk around singing all day long.
What are you singing, Jill?
I have no idea, actually, and it drives him nuts. But at least now I know it's good for my health. So bad for my relationship, but good for my health.
Are you singing to-do lists? Are you singing Taylor Swift? What are we working with here?
I think I'm singing whatever I recently heard.
Makes
Like
sense.
whatever is in my head, commercials, anything.
I bet if it stopped, he would be upset too.
I think he'd be like, what is wrong?
It's too quiet in here.
And sticking with music, from USA Today, Sabrina Carpenter announced her 7th studio album on Wednesday. It is called Man's Best Friend. It is set for release on August 29th, 2025. Carpenter, who you might know from her hits Espresso and Taste, announced the album on Instagram with an accompanying photo that appears to be the album's cover art. And not everyone is happy with what they saw. We'll let you look up the photo yourself and make that call because it's not necessarily safe for work, as they say. And this is work.
So just for context, it is a bit racy. So the comment section of her post blew up. Someone called the photo insensitive given the political climate and state of women's rights right now. Another commenter said she was setting back women 5 decades. And even a Scotland-based advocacy organization for women experiencing domestic abuse spoke out against it, calling it, quote, regressive, and said it evokes, quote, tired tropes that reduce women to pets, props, and possessions.
Others have chimed in to defend her. They say the photo was clearly satirical, meant to comment on how the public views her as just for the male gaze. Her last album, Short and Sweet, made her a breakout star, won her 2 Grammy Awards, and it featured songs like Taste and Please, Please, Please. And she did become known for her sex-positive performances and lyrics.
Ironically, Jill, I went on a run this morning and not knowing this news and searched for Sabrina Carpenter because I wanted to run to her and saw that she had a new single from her upcoming album, and it's called Man-Child. It was actually released on June 5th, so I'm a bit late. But some have pointed out that based on this new single, which pokes fun at men, that maybe this album cover could also be satirical and playing into that. Carpenter hasn't directly addressed the controversy, but there was a cover story in Rolling Stone published on Thursday, and she addressed critics of her sex-positive stage presence. She said she has, quote, never lived in a time where women have been picked apart more and scrutinized in every capacity. Honestly, Jill, that's sort of my reaction to it. I'm kind of like, do what you want, Sabrina. I feel like being a feminist is understanding that everyone should have the space and freedom to express themselves however they want. So I'm sort of like, whether she's doing this because there's some sort of social commentary behind it or just because it makes her feel good, I support it. But we were discussing this in the editorial meeting this morning, and I know you have some thoughts, not just as a woman, but also as a mother.
Right. So we were talking about this story and kind of just going around to see if anyone thought anything different. And I think I'm the only parent, with Moshe Way, I think I'm the only parent on the call. So when I plug my phone into my car and I put on Spotify, which is how I listen to music, the album cover of whatever song I'm playing pops up. And my daughter, who is 6 years old, undoubtedly sees it and always comments and asks questions about who's singing and other various questions. And a lot of these album covers are very sexual. So I'm always like, oh my God, what is she going to ask me about this? So I don't necessarily want to get involved in this debate over Sabrina Carpenter's album cover specifically. But I can say that I do wish some artists, particularly female artists, thought a bit more about the images that they're putting out there. Because yes, as a parent, I could try to censor things and make sure that my kids don't see them, but you can only do so much, which is another reason why I heart Taylor Swift, because I know when her songs come on, at least the visuals, the album covers are just really her face or her singing, they're child friendly. So I don't mean to sound like a prude, but I guess as a parent of an impressionable kid, I have started to see things a little bit differently. Sari, what is that expression? We eventually become our parents, right? I mean, which totally. I feel like I have become, but I guess it's just seeing my daughter and the way that she looks at these photos and the way that she really is like asking me about them and being influenced by them. I've started to just feel differently about, especially so many artists who just really leave nothing to the imagination.
Absolutely. I mean, right when you said that, I was like, that's a great point, Jill. I hadn't thought of that. I am not a parent. So that makes total sense. And I do see where these feminist groups and where these women are coming from, hoping that women don't have to sexualize themselves in order to get attention, in order to sell albums. But again, we don't have to get too much into the debate. But you did mention Taylor Swift. And I do want to say that there are rumors that there's a Taylor Swift collaboration in Carpenter's new album. So that's why it's gotten a lot of buzz, especially since anything that Taylor Swift touches gets a lot of buzz. Now, Carpenter has also said that her intent for this album was rooted in artistic spontaneity, and the surrounding controversy may actually be part of the album's narrative. Very much like Taylor, she has been known to be masterful at crafting her narrative. So maybe there's something more beneath the surface here.
All right, Sari, it is Friday. Cheers to the freaking weekend. Time for what we are watching, reading, and eating. Okay, what are you watching?
So honestly, I think I'm watching the music video that was released for Man-Child because I was pulling it up as I was writing that story. But again, I'm at work right now, so I figured I should wait to watch it when I get home. So I'm very excited to do that and maybe dance along and maybe sing along, which will improve my brain. And how about you, Jill? What are you watching?
So I started Stick. It's on Apple TV with Owen Wilson. He plays a former professional golfer who had this on-course meltdown, which derailed his career. But then he goes all in to mentor a teenage golf phenom. So far, so good. It's Apple TV, so it comes out one episode per week. It's old school, but I'm a fan so far. Okay, what are you reading?
So my father-in-law actually sent me this article from The Athletic called Roger Federer's Commencement Speech Wasn't Just a Viral Moment, It Was Masterful. So I'm going to be reading that, and I might watch that commencement speech as well, which was actually from last year. It made a lot of headlines because one of the quotes he said was that he actually loses like more than half of his points. I don't know if you remember this, Jill, and people were shocked by the fact that he loses, I think it was something like 54% of the points that he's had in his career. And there's a lesson there somewhere, but I'm going to have to listen up for it.
I remember watching that commencement speech and I still think about it. I think it is a good lesson that we learn more from our mistakes and that when you make a mistake, just keep going. Don't look back.
Jill, what are you reading this weekend?
So I was away for a couple of days and I asked on Instagram for some book recommendations. And I got a ton. I'll be posting them on my Instagram account in case anyone out there is looking for some recommendations for a good book this summer. My account, Jill R. Wagner. Some names that came up, Everything is Tuberculosis by John Green. And then I Seek a Kind Person, My Father's 7 Children and the Adverts That Helped Them Escape the Holocaust by Julian Borger. So again, those were two that a bunch of people had mentioned.
All right, Jill. So what are you eating on this birthday weekend?
Birthday cake. Usually,
course.
dare I say, I usually have to buy it myself, which is like
gosh.
a little sad, but I
Life
do
of
it.
a mom.
But I'm just like, whatever, I'm doing it.
What is your birthday cake of choice?
At least I know I'm going to like it. In my older age, I like a little vanilla. I used to be a chocolate person, but now I've switched.
Vanilla sheet cake?
And anything really with some good icing and maybe some sprinkles. Sari, what are you eating?
So this new, very authentic matcha place just opened up near me, and they have matcha soft serve. And this was actually something I had in Japan, which I hope Moshe is enjoying on his trip to Japan right now too. I think I had a matcha soft serve every day of that trip. I really rolled home from that one, and I'm very excited that they opened one in New York City. So I will be lining up because, of course, there's a line around the corner for this matcha soft serve. So I'll be lining up to get that.
Well, that's when you know it's good. And I'm glad that you're sticking with Moshe's tradition. I think every other week he's eating some new type of ice cream. So I feel like it's very
This is in
appropriate.
my old age. I've become such an ice cream person. I used to not be at all. And now I can't. I have to have an ice cream every weekend.
Well, good for you. All right, Sari, thank you for joining us on this Friday podcast. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it was so much fun.
And thank you all for listening to the Mo News podcast. If you like what you hear, please share this with your friends. It will help us grow. Follow us and subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and review us in the App Store. Those reviews really help. Everyone have a wonderful weekend, and look for Sari to join us again next week at some point.
See you then.
Thanks for listening to the Mo News podcast. Have a fantastic day. I hope you enjoyed.